time. So good evening. How's everyone doing? Raise your hands so I know you're there. I can't see anyone, or give me a thumbs up. Is there a thumbs up on the bottom there? There we go. We have hands raised. We're doing it okay. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. I see you all. Thank you. I'm Ainsley Cantorell. I'm the Strategic Initiatives Advisor here at the Providence Housing Authority. And I just want to welcome you this evening. I am going to be your guide, walking you through some really fantastic information from some really great experts in their field. I want to go over some housekeeping before we get started. So you've already discovered the raising your hand and the thumbs up button. But I also want to note that you have a Q&A button down on the bottom of your screen. Please use that to chat any questions or type in any questions in that Q&A box at any time during the presentation. And at the very end, we're going to take all those questions from you. Try not to put them in the chat feature because it's just, as you can tell, we're learning how to use this tech, and I'm afraid I don't want to lose any of your questions in the presentation. If you're joining us by telephone only, you can ask a question by pressing *9 when we get to that question section at the end. So tonight's agenda is very simple and easy. We're going to talk a little bit about the PHA just to make sure that everyone knows who we are and what we do. And a little bit more about our leased housing programs, your captive audience, so I got to get that out there. And so we're going to have our Director of Lease Housing, Donna De La Rosa, jump in and share a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of landlords, tenants, and if you do work with a Section 8 program, the role of a Section 8 participant, Section 8 Housing Authority. And then you're going to hear from the esteemed attorney, Michael Crane, who is going to talk all about Leasing 101 and give you a really deep dive into the leasing process and what your lease should include. And then from there, we ask that we're going to do our question and answers, and then we ask you to stick around for just a few extra minutes to fill out a quick survey at the end of the presentation to give us feedback so we can keep making these better every time. Before we dive completely in, I just want to remind you that the session is being recorded, and we will be posting this and the slides at later on, and we'll be emailing them out to all the participants, as well as putting them out there more widely. So, are we ready to dive in? Here we go.
Yes, Ainsley, this is Peter. I just wanted to ask you if you want me to do, I have the one question poll about who's here. Do you want me to set that up and put that out?
That would be lovely. Thank you, sir. Peter Asen, Director of Strategy and Development there. If everyone could take a quick moment to check in with us on if you are an existing Section 8 landlord with the Housing Authority or with a different housing authority. All right, the answers are coming in. We're almost there. Give everyone a couple more minutes. I see a lot of newbies. I like it. All newbies. Oh my. I'm so excited. Woo-hoo. Excellent. All right. I think we have as many in as we're probably going to get. So I'm going to end our poll here. Last chance, last call. Tell me who you are. Okay. I'm ending the poll, and looks like you're all pretty new. So excited. Okay, this is good to know. So then I'm not going to go over anything that you have never seen before. So first, let me share with you a little bit about the PHA. We are the state's largest housing provider, affordable housing provider. We own and operate about 2,600 units. Can everyone hear me? I think some folks can't hear me, but I'm getting messages that folks can't hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going then. And hopefully folks can, okay, you can hear me. Okay, good, thank you. So whatever the issue is I'll let Peter deal with the technical stuff later. So PHA has 2,600 units of housing in the city of Providence. We also administer a program called the Section 8 program, which gives us about 2,700 vouchers on the private market. So that's really exciting. And late in 2019, right before COVID hit, we were afforded the opportunity by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rhode Island to work on the housing crisis that is facing Rhode Islanders. And we were very fortunate because now that crisis is obviously even more great, but it's all about working with landlords and how we can help landlords, how we can be better landlords and make our landlord partners as successful as possible. So one way for us to do that is to share free knowledge. So we're going to be offering this series of great webinars, including experts in the field like attorney Michael Crane. We're going to be sharing resources with everyone, such as the financial assistance programs like the Safe Harbor program with the that's over at the United Way that provides back rent for anyone who's behind due to COVID related reasons. And that's something that a landlord or tenant can apply for to help fix that gap. We're sharing information on eviction moratoriums. And, you know, we're also trying to provide financial incentives for those of you with vacancies so that we can lease up. And we have new vouchers out there and people looking for units in these tough times. And so we wanted to provide an incentive and money in your pocket to work with us and to work with some of the great people that we have in our program. So if you're interested in learning more about any of these, you can go to provhousing.org/landlord or reach out to Caroline. I'll post her information at the very end of the session and we can get you connected and do a deeper dive into some of those things. So I'm going to move on to talking a little bit more about just what Section 8 is, because you'll hear the term Section 8, you'll hear voucher program, you'll hear HAP contract. And so I like to get the definitions out front. Section 8 is a federally funded program that is administered at the city or town level. For Providence, the Providence Housing Authority is the person who administers it, though there are still some vouchers in the city that are administered by Rhode Island Housing. So it can be confusing who's got what and where. Generally though, give us a call if you have any questions and we're happy to kind of guide you through or check on something. Eligibility, you have to be at or below 50% of area median income. So that would be in Providence, a family of 4 making $43,000 a year, give or take. Most of the people who start the program and who apply to our program are actually under 30% of AMI. So we're talking about a family of 4 making less than $26,000 a year. So, you know, very low income. And the subsidy that they get, so what we, the Housing Authority, give to them and are able to provide is based on how much income they make and the size of their family. The tenants pay a portion of their income towards rent and utilities, and they pay that directly to the landlord. The PHA then pays the remaining portion of the rent to the landlord via direct deposit. So that's a nice bonus too, is that the PHA does give you a direct deposit on time every month for a large portion of the rent. It has a very low eviction rate. The 3-year average for a PHA voucher holder, our evictions are out of the 2,700 vouchers we have out there. We average about 6 evictions a year total. So think about that. I always share this just because there's so many misconceptions about who is a voucher holder and what type of tenant they are. And we talk a lot more about that in some of the later episodes of this series. So I encourage you to join those because they're really eye-opening and amazing. And finally, we have a large pool of applicants who sign up to receive a voucher. There's about 14,000 people on our waiting list. That's 1,000, not 1,400, 14,000 people who have applied, which means that most of the people who have vouchers have waited anywhere between 10 to 14 years on average before they receive the voucher that they then take to the private market and have to find a unit with. And we also have a large pool of applicants who are eligible tenants that we've given a voucher, who are ready to rent, ready to go, and who can get into a unit very quickly. So that's really exciting if you have a vacancy, especially in those years when the market's not so hot and you're looking for a tenant. I'm going to turn it over to Donna. She's going to share a little bit more about the rights and responsibilities. Donna?
Hi, thank you. In just a minute, Attorney Michael Crane will speak in depth about leases and rental agreements, but we'd like to start by highlighting some key roles and responsibilities. When you lease to a voucher holder, the housing authority becomes your partner, but each party has distinct responsibilities. The housing authority determines whether the tenant is eligible for the program, but the owner is ultimately responsible to continue screening the tenant using routine legal criteria. All parties are required to abide by the terms of the lease, the contract, or the voucher. And so as Ainsley said, with the voucher, the tenant pays 30 to 40% of their adjusted income. Some people think that it's 30% of the rent. It's not 30% of the rent, it's 30% of the tenant's income. So the portions change as tenant's income changes. The housing authority calculates the rent portions and makes the direct deposit to the owner on the first business day of the month. And the tenant pays their portion directly to you. The housing authority conducts an inspection prior to the lease, and then every 2 years, unless there's a complaint, the inspector will go. The owner is responsible to maintain the upkeep of the unit at all times, and there'll be another session concerning the inspection criteria. So as a partner, the housing authority is available to mediate any issue that you have with your tenant. The owner, however, must enforce the lease. We're not a party to the lease, so we cannot enforce it. So that's one of the prime responsibilities of the owner, is to enforce the lease. And what else is very important is that the owner sends a legal notice. If you send a legal notice to your tenant, the housing authority has to receive a copy of it. And as soon as we do get a copy, the tenant will be contacted to resolve and tell them that they need to resolve the issue, because if they are evicted for cause or for non-payment, it'll lead to loss of the voucher. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Attorney Michael Crane, who's the outside counsel to the PHA and does this on a daily basis. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everybody. Yes, my name is Michael Crane. I've been outside legal counsel of Providence Housing Authority for about 5 years, just over 5 years. But I also have my own private practice where I deal a lot with landlords and rental agreements. And I know a couple people on the presentation have been to my office regarding their rental agreements, so that's good. But usually, you know, we'll go through tonight and we'll focus on rental agreements in Section 8 is really what we're going to focus on. There's not a lot of differences, as you'll see, but as I speak, I'm speaking with an angle towards Section 8, not an angle towards just your regular private landlord. So we can get started. And you'll see here, understanding your rights and responsibilities. This is very important because most landlords, when they purchase a property or become involved with a tenant, the understanding their rights and responsibilities isn't very clear, and it's understandable. You've rented a unit to an individual, they've taken possession, and now you know what are you responsible for? What are they responsible for? and what can you be liable for? I think these are all very important items that you need to know and understand. And we'll go through that, and we'll go through, I won't identify specific statutes, but I'll let you know what the Rhode Island laws say. So you'll see here you can have different types of rental agreements. You can have an oral rental agreement, which is a rental agreement that's controlled by the Rhode Island Landlord-Tenant Act, which everybody is probably pretty familiar with. Those are month-to-month agreements as they default, and which is good, which is very beneficial to most landlords. You can also have a written agreement, and you can have a 1 year, what people will call a 1 year lease, but we'll call a written rental agreement for a year as well. There's not much difference. I just like to call them as a rental agreement as opposed to lease. It's a little less formal, and I think it provides the landlord with a little bit more control over what's going on within their property. So now what we need to do is we need to clearly define that term of tenancy, and that's what happens in a rental agreement versus a lease agreement. A rental agreement, we can fall back on a month-to-month. A lease agreement normally are for 1 year. Month-to-month is good because if you get a tenant that really is not a good tenant, or you need to sell the property for financial purposes, or there are other issues going on, you can figure out a way to terminate the landlord-tenant relationship much easier than if you have a 1 year lease agreement. Within any agreement that you have, you're always going to want to define the rental amounts. And you may think this is crazy, like, well, that's obvious. But you would be surprised how many times people will say your rent is $900 a month plus water, plus utilities, whatever they may be, they're going to stay in my name. That's not very good. Really, what you want is you want a $900 a month rent. It can be any amount. I'm just using 900 as an example. But then you're going to want, if you want to charge back utilities or water, we want to call those additional rent. So we would move those to a different section of the lease, and we would define those as additional rent, because that's something you can capture later on as rent that may be due and owing. Another thing you're going to want to do is define the landlord responsibilities and define the tenant responsibilities. The Rhode Island Landlord-Tenant Act, and I think we can go on to the next slide, is pretty clear that you cannot limit the rights and responsibilities of the tenant. But there's issues to consider here. The type of tenant, whether it's subsidized, low income versus a very high income tenant. Who owns the property? Is it in your name? Is it in an LLC? Or are you a property manager managing the property for somebody else? What's the condition of the property? That's always something you should know going into any agreement you enter into. You should be taking pictures. You should be doing some sort of inspection checklist as the tenants enter. I think that's really important for Section 8 as well. The main complaint we hear from Section 8 landlords is, I failed the Section 8 inspection, but the tenant was the one that caused the issues. I can tell you 9.9 out of 10 times when we ask them, well, did you do an initial inspection report and have the tenant sign off or take pictures? The answer is no. So ultimately, whether it's Section 8, whether it's a building inspector, the condition of the property comes back to you. You're going to have to repair it, but you have a security deposit and you have ways to recoup some of those funds from the tenant. And also, you need to make sure in your lease any Section 8 requirements. Obviously, you're going to forward your lease to Donna and her team. They're going to review it as it goes into Section 8, make sure it's a year lease, and they're going to approve it. But you're going to want to make sure that there's any Section 8 requirements in there, which just ensures that you're meeting all the local building and inspection codes, the building codes, excuse me, and also any requirements, reporting requirements that you may have to Section 8, as those may change year to year. And now we'll talk about lease terms. So when we talk about lease terms, we have to remember we don't want to limit the rights and responsibilities of the tenant, but also what rights and responsibilities do you have? What can you capture? And when I say don't limit their rights and responsibilities, basically, you don't want to make the tenant responsible for ensuring that water is being delivered to the building. Utilities, yes. Utilities, absolutely. We all know this. The tenants can be responsible for their own utilities. Utilities are, and we'll go over this in a later slide, hot water, electricity, gas, oil, those things the tenant can be responsible for. Water, you're responsible for. Hot water, you're not responsible for. What does that mean? Well, water comes in from the street into the building. So, and not only that, whether it's who's ever serving you, Providence Water in this case, probably, you're responsible to pay the bill for Providence Water. You're responsible to make sure that the pipes are working into the building. If it's not paid, remember, Providence Water gets an automatic lien on your house by statute. The property owner is responsible for water. So even if you make the tenant responsible for water, you got to pay the bill every month if they're not paying you. It's snow. Snow's a big one that we get all the time. You have 1-3 family in Providence. You don't want to pay $100-$150 in the winter to remove snow. Well, there's liability issues, and we'll go on that in the next slide. But really, you want to consider, who do you want to be responsible for the snow? Do you have a tenant you could rely on, give a credit to every month, or do you just want to hire a company? Parking. Do you have parking at the building? Do you have a handicapped individual residing at your unit? If you have Section 8, there's a chance they have a disability. So if they have a disability, what parking spot are they getting? Are you leaving the first 2 spots for somebody with a disability? Do you have on-street, is street parking available? So those are terms that you're going to want to consider. And then the maintenance and care of the exterior of the property. We talk about garbage, refuse, a lawn, flowers, anything, who's responsible for mowing the lawn, who's responsible for taking the garbage in and out. You're going to want to make sure that that's clearly defined in your lease and who you want to be responsible for that. And the reason why I don't give you a specific answer is because many times people will live in their 2 or 3 family, and then the other 2 units will be the income to pay their mortgage or their income for their own that they use for their everyday life. So if you reside in the property, then you're probably going to be taking the garbage out every week to make sure it goes out. You're probably going to be figuring out a way to remove snow. The interior portion of the premises, maintenance and care, you're always responsible for the maintenance and care of the interior portion of your premises. If the tenant causes an issue, you can take it out of the security deposit when they move out. You can get them to pay when you want to renew a term, or they want to renew for a year, or maybe even 2 years. That's something you can discuss with them at that time. But remember, if a building inspector comes along and cites you for a violation, you're responsible to repair that violation. So now we'll go into parking. I went into parking a little bit in depth. Obviously, you see the picture there. It's somewhat humorous, but something that we, almost see. Cars will park on top of each other. So you're going to want to have a good plan in place if you have one of those lots where it's 4 cars, 2 in front and 2 in back. How are you going to move cars? Who's going to be responsible for, for ensuring that there's access in and out access to that driveway? Renter's insurance, you can always require your tenants to obtain renter's insurance. If they don't, it could be a breach of your rental agreement, absolutely. But you have to make sure they can afford renter's insurance. But you can always put in there that you advise them to get renter's insurance. And that's what I always tell my clients. Advise people to get renter's insurance. You should put language in there that says you don't want an illegal use. Something as simple as running a business out of their residence. You don't want them doing that. That's an illegal use. They can always run a business with 1 person out of there. People try to fight that all the time. You usually lose. You're going to want to put in there whether you want them to have pets or animals. And then also, what about other tenants and guests? Are they allowed to have a guest for 7 to 10 days? Or do you not want them to have a guest at all? Those are issues that you're going to want to discuss, think about, and determine what's best for you. If they're Section 8, the tenants and guests you're really probably not going to want because it's going to be a violation of Section 8. Essential services. So this is a little bit what I talked about. We hit on with you're required to supply heat, hot water, or essential services. What does that mean? That means they have to have access to hot water, heat, and water. So obviously water you're going to have to provide, but they would have to pay their utilities. But as long as the boiler's working, as long as the oil tank's working, as long as everything's getting to the unit properly, you've done your job. But if the boiler goes, if a thermostat runs out of batteries and they don't know how to change their batteries, if the thermostat just breaks, if a pipe breaks, if they cannot heat the unit to 68 degrees 12 months a year, yes, when it's 95 degrees out in last July, if they couldn't heat it to 68 degrees, you're not providing an essential service. So you have to remember, you need to supply those essential services. Penalties, the city or town could remove the individual from the unit, they could condemn it, and they could force you to put them up in a hotel until you supply the essential services. Most likely, the tenant will ask you, you'll repair them, or they'll have to go in for a restraining order, and then you'll have to repair them before the restraining order hearing. Liabilities and risks. This is a big question because of pets. A lot of people want to limit the pets because they don't want dangerous dogs. Pit bulls, Doberman pinschers. Some don't like German shepherds because of the size. Bull mastiffs, which are pretty large dogs. You can limit those, absolutely. You can limit those as pets. You can't limit them as service animals or emotional support animals, which is going to be another presentation that we'll get into. But always know, as pets, you can limit pets. You can say no pets, you can say one pet, you could limit the size of the pet, whatever you feel you need to do. And Section 8 does not care. But if you're getting Section 8, you don't want to limit animals. And that obviously we'll cover in the next presentation. Snow, we always put snow as a liability. You really should be removing snow within 24 hours of a snowstorm. That's what most insurance policies will look for if you get sued for someone slipping and falling during an ice storm or a snowstorm. Garbage, obviously there's a liability with your tenants taking garbage in and out every week. It's not very high, but you want to be careful. They could cut themselves taking in and out of the garbage if they put their hands in there. There's the liabilities of rodents, pests, anything that may come about from garbage. Hoarders. Hoarders is a little different from garbage. Why? Because it's usually inside the units. And usually that'll attract pests, vermin, there's anything that could come about. A lot of cockroaches, but you want to be careful because if the issues come from one unit of a building and it's a 3-family building and no others, then that individual, yes, is absolutely liable for those pests. And you could bill back those pests. But one, you don't want it to spread to the rest of the units. So to do that, you should take on some liability and probably get a pest inspector, an extermination company to come in and treat the apartment. Remember, that's another way you could fail Section 8 as well, if the uncleanliness of the unit, and you don't want to fail your Section 8 inspection because of a hoarder or you're not doing what you need to do. If you provide the proof, that will help you. And that goes with the cleanliness of the units as well. And then obviously renters insurance, always want to advise that they have renters insurance.
Michael, that brings up a really good point, and I just want to just stop you here. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Cleanliness of a unit. How would you know what a unit looks like, or if somebody's a hoarder? How often should you be going to check out a unit as a landlord? What are your best practices there?
So Rhode Island requires a 48-hour notice to enter for access to a unit, unless there's an emergency. So if someone calls you and says, "Hey, listen, the second floor just flooded onto the first floor," that's an emergency. You don't need approval for access. But really, if you want, every 3 months, 6 months, you could ask and give them 48 hours notice, request access, and inspect the unit. And that's something you should be doing to ensure not only the cleanliness of the unit, ensure that there's not a ton of damage. Also, you might want to inspect the unit if you're going to renew a tenant to ensure that they've kept the unit up to snuff and that it's meets minimum housing standards. Remember, all you have to do is meet minimum housing standards. People shudder when you say that, but that's what you have to do. So if you get a tenant who you can't get out, is causing issues, make the repairs to meet minimum housing standards until you can get them out, and then you can fix the unit up to what your standards are for that property. Now, pets or animals. This is its own separate slide. It always brings up the most questions because will you allow pets? This is how I look at it. 75% of landlords won't allow pets, and the other 25% love pets so much they think it's okay for people to have pets. I've got a case right now, let me scare you all, where they aren't cleaning out the litter box and it's leaking through to the floor below. So I always tell people, allowing pets is great. That's really nice of you, but I think there are inherent risks that come along, increased risks that come along with allowing pets. I would never allow more than one, but many people will allow one or two, will allow up to 2 dogs or 2 cats. Definitely don't allow fish tanks. If they break, there's your flood. Some people, you know, will have snakes and whatever else they may have. You know, so be careful. Now, emotional support service animals are not pets. And we'll get into this in the reasonable accommodation discussion, but really be careful. If somebody says, I have an emotional support or service animal, we're still close enough to the law being new where people will say, but I don't allow pets. You have now discriminated against that tenant. Do not say that. Just say, I need the required documentation from you, which is a letter from your doctor, unless you're a large corporation. I don't think any large corporations are on here. But ask for a letter from the doctor supporting the tenant's position that it's an emotional support or service animal, and then you're going to want to allow that animal to come in the unit. Otherwise, you're going to face a discrimination charge at the Human Rights Commission or a lawsuit over at Superior Court. Smoking. So is smoking allowed? Most people don't allow smoking. You can't discriminate against somebody for not allowing smoking. Why? Because there's alternative ways to ingest marijuana, THC, however you want to say it, with edibles now and everything. So they can smoke outside. So if they show you the medical marijuana card, you can tell them you don't have to smoke to ingest marijuana. There are other ways to ingest it, and you should do that. Also, you're getting a Section 8 voucher. So if you're getting a Section 8 voucher, there's federal funding involved, and the feds have not legalized the use of marijuana. So you can say marijuana is still illegal because you have a Section 8 voucher. And that would actually put their voucher at risk as well. So I think pushing back a little bit if someone has a Section 8 voucher is just fine. They can smoke outside. You can put some there. They can smoke 20 feet away from the building, whatever you want. But if they're smoking inside the building, you can have language that says they are not allowed to smoke inside the building. Your best legal steps. So obviously we're talking more of, you know, non-payment cases, send a 5-day demand notice. If you happen to have a project-based housing, if you're providing project-based housing, you would send a 10-day notice. You can terminate their tenancy. There's 4 ways in Rhode Island to terminate a Section 8 housing. Normally it's if you want to use it, a family member wants to use it, if you need a major rehab, or if they're, you know, if they're really in major non-compliance to their lease, you can terminate at the end of a tenancy, or in the middle of a tenancy, you could send a non-compliance notice. And the non-compliance notice could be for anything under the Rhode Island general laws or whatever's in your lease. The other thing you could do is obtain a temporary restraining order. So if they're smoking in the house, if they're causing fights with other tenants, whatever they may be doing, you can hopefully get a temporary restraining order to cease that action. And if it's egregious enough, if they've, you know, flashed a gun at somebody, stabbed somebody, there's a chance you could remove them on a restraining order. Very difficult, especially during COVID, but it is possible. And retaliation. I always tell people be careful after we talk about the last 2 things. If a tenant calls the local building inspector, or a tenant sends you a note that there's issues with the apartment, and you turn around and send them a notice of termination of tenancy, their defense is retaliation. Retaliation is not a defense to a non-payment case for 90% of the judges that read the statutes properly. Some say you can file retaliation as a defense to a non-payment case because they're withholding rent because of the issues. But if you do that, I tell everybody, you must wait at least 6 months to terminate the tenancy. So be very careful if you're going to terminate a tenancy because someone is sending you a note that there's issues with the unit. That doesn't mean if they cause the issues, you could terminate the tenancy. Absolutely. You just better have an inspection report and you better have good notes as to what those damages were to the apartment. So any questions on this? I know there's going to be lots of questions. I will tell everybody the one thing that you may question, but I'm not going to answer many questions on emotional support animals tonight or reasonable accommodations. We'll save that for the next presentation.
It's a little dangling a little bait for them there. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, I haven't seen any questions coming in yet. I'm going to give everyone, oh, we've got a question. Let's see, we've got Ms. Hilliard. Let me have you answer it. We'd like to answer the question live. So trash removal, what's your question about trash removal? I don't know how to get you to answer the question. There we go. Here we go.
Can you hear me?
I can.
So if they have trash, right? Like, is the landlord just responsible to move the garbage, the trash from outdoors that's already out there? Because if it's a liability and they get cut on their own trash, like, can you explain that to me a little better? Like, is it the
Yeah.
landlord's job to
So-
pull the trash to the street?
So how many units do you have in the
I'm sorry, sir.
building? It's-
3. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just, okay.
So let's say you have 3 units in the building. Let's pretend it's, you may live there or whatever it may be. But let's pretend the first floor causes a lot of issues with trash. They're always throwing trash out the window near the bin. They're throwing, they're bringing a lot of, God, who knows what. They walk by, they see stuff on the street, they bring it, and then they end up putting it in the trash. What I'm really talking about is if somebody comes and they're bringing their trash down and they want to stuff everything into the bin, and there's the bins haven't been taken out for a couple weeks, and now all of a sudden it's overflowing because of that, or there's so much junk around there, they go to bring their trash out and they slip and fall on all that junk, and we know the junk's been there. Your issue is you may have some liability. They may file a lawsuit because of injuries they may occur. I'm not saying you're liable. I'm just saying be careful. So if you have in your lease that each tenant is responsible for their own trash, and you have separately marked trash areas for unit 1, 2, and 3, and maybe you build, little barriers, or cubbies for each trash, that could help limit your liabilities and responsibilities. So
Okay.
that's all. I'm just making sure, and the city or town could drive by and see it. They could file a municipal ticket, which is like $100 that you got to remove the trash. Those types of things.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have another question about which utility would be, is the bill, which bill is hot water?
That would be
So-
gas or oil, depending on however you heat the oil in your place. Or sorry, heat the water in your place. Don't heat the oil in your place. You won't have a place. So however you heat the water with gas or oil, go ahead and you can make, the tenant should be paying for the gas or oil. I'm talking about just the cold water that comes into the building on a pipe. That's the Providence water bill that you would be responsible for.
Okay, so that one was Nancy's question. Thank you, Miss Nancy. Any other questions, either in the question and answer or in the chat? Let's see what we got. Can you share a little bit more about if you have just say an awful tenant who needs to get out, they've got everything shut off. Can you talk a little bit about what you can do to move them out, get them out? Say you just have a bad tenant. What do we do here? Can you reiterate those steps again?
Let me, so really what you want to do is if they're on Section 8, it's a little bit more difficult. You're going to want to terminate their tenancy for one of their reasons. You're really going to want to make sure, though, this is the one thing I tell people about this. This is the part where of all the cases, you're going to want an attorney the most. Because you're not going to want to terminate their tenancy and put too much in there, because then it's going to be interpreted as a non-compliance letter. And now you've sent a letter which the judge could throw out. So what you're really going to want to do is just copy word for word one of the 4 reasons that you can terminate a tenancy under Section 8. Or if it's a regular tenant and it's a month-to-month, you're just going to want to send a termination of tenancy letter for 30 days and get them out. The other thing you could do is if it's in the middle of the lease, non-compliance, and if they're behind on rent at all, we always recommend sending, sending a 5-day demand notice for non-payment of rent. Even if you think it's for $100 and they're going to satisfy it, send it. Let them satisfy it, because now you've sent 1 letter in 6 months. And if it ever gets where you can send a second letter within 6 months and you can file that second case, then you can terminate them and you'll be okay.
Should you ever turn off the water, turn off the power, get a moving truck?
So that's a good question. You can't do any of that on your own. That's considered a constructive eviction, and you'll end up paying the tenant money. I can promise you that. At least 3 times whatever their rent is, plus punitive damages, plus attorney's fees if they get an attorney. It just keeps going. Don't ever do anything yourself. Just abide by the law, because you see on the news these landlords that get arrested for just going in and trying to do a self-help eviction.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand. We can take it live. We can put it in the chat. Oh, here's a great question. So aside from you, Attorney Crane, can you provide some suggestions for a landlord who may want to have their lease reviewed and to get feedback, and what should they look for in a lawyer? What should they look for as far as cost?
Yeah. So I normally tell people you want to bring it to a lawyer who does, landlord tenant work, and not just landlord tenant work outside of court, but also who goes to court. The reason why is they're going to be able to tailor the language to how the judges are going to adjudicate matters, which is one reason I talked about the additional rent earlier for utilities, is because we know now that judges are accepting additional rent language. So if you want to have a lawyer review your lease, you can contact any lawyer that does landlord tenant work, and they should be able to review it for you. Usually for somewhere between $200 and $300 is normally the cost that's charged, that I hear about, is the going rate. It's usually about 2 hours of work to go through the lease and make some changes.
And don't forget, once you have that template, you can reuse it, so it is an expense worth making.
Correct.
I'll add that in because it's not as self-serving for me, but it is a good expense to have, and it's probably a write-off somewhere too.
I don't do tax law.
Yeah, there we go. That's tax law. We're not getting into that one this session. We do have Maria who has a live question she's going to ask. Hi, Maria. I'm going to unmute you there. You there?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you have a tenant who's behind more than 1 month and you want to send it the 5-day letter, do you just go from the current month moving forward, or can you
No.
track too?
No. So if you have let's say you have a tenant who's behind 3 months. Let's say they're behind, what are we? We're in October. So August, September, October. You want to send them a 5-day demand notice. They're not 15 days in arrears yet for October, but let's pretend they are. So you're going to want to send a 5-day demand notice with August, September, and October. If you don't, and you file the case and they show up to court and they're ready to settle or go to a trial, and you've only put October in there, or you've only put September, October in there, you've waived August rent. You'd have to go back to a collections case to get that, or you'd have to see if you could dismiss the case, send a new notice, and refile. So you always want to, it's always rent that's more than 15 days in arrears.
And
Okay.
should that be every month, Michael?
You can send it every, yeah, it's every month. So if I want to mail a notice on October 7th, and August, September, and October rent are due and owing, I'm only going to put August and September rent in there. And I'll be able to collect the per diem amount through the day of the hearing when I finally get to court. And I can add all that in, but the notice can only be for rent that's more, and rent only, not additional rent, not late fees, nothing like that. That's more than 15 days in arrears.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got another one here. Ms. Kota? I'm gonna have you go live here. Give it a minute. Where is it? There you come. There we go. All right. What's your question? Oh, there's okay. So there's a great question about and I don't know why we're not unmuted. There we go. Why don't you ask your question? Oh, can't talk. Okay, thank you. I will ask it for you. So if you're buying a property that has a Section 8 tenant, and this is a great question, but you've never been a Section 8 landlord before, is this something we should check with them? Do we need to do an inspection with the new landlord? Kind of what should you be looking for as a person buying a unit with existing tenants, not just Section 8 tenants, but any tenant, and then further if they're a Section 8 tenant?
I'll answer the part about buying, and then maybe Donna will answer the part about exactly what your guys are looking for with a Section 8 tenant. If you're buying a property with tenants already in it, you're going to want to make sure, you're going to hope that either there's A, rental agreements, B, that they're up to date on rent, and you're going to want to get some sort of letter from either the seller and preferably the seller and the tenants stating that they're up to date on their rent. You're going to want to make sure that there's adjustments on the settlement statement for the security deposit and any rents that have been paid up through the date of the closing. And you're going to want to make sure you have contact information for all the tenants.
And Donna, what about for if there are Section 8 tenants in the building?
So usually either the owner or the tenants themselves will know who their representatives are. So you should give a call to the representative. They'll tell you the documents that you'll need, such as the lease, you'll have to fill a W-9, some identification documents that we need. And depending on when the last inspection was, we can send the inspector out to do another inspection and just assume the lease.
So you'll want to ask questions about when the last Section 8 inspection was, who is the program rep, or, at least what agency is administering the HAP contract. Hopefully, like Michael said, if they have a lease agreement in place, you'll have that, and that'll have an assistance HAP contract, which is an assistance payment contract. You'll have that with you. And so that way you can review all of that, get in touch with somebody from the Section 8 department and go through any of the necessary steps. Paperwork to start Section 8 too, Donna, if you just want to touch on that really quick. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's like you said, just a W-9, like a canceled check, isn't it? Something just to set up the direct deposit
Yes, where we should send the money. That's all.
Yeah. And then to sign updated agreements for the contracts,
the
right?
Contract and give us a copy of the lease with the tenant.
There we go. All right. So we've got a great new question. We have, if you fail an inspection, how long do we have to get it fixed? That's a good one. And there's a couple of different answers to that. Donna?
Okay. So if it's an emergency item, such as a smoke alarm, it should be fixed in 24 hours. But the majority of the violations, we give you 30 days. And if you run into an issue where you can't get the supplies or supplies are on order, then you can request an extension in writing. And
that's great. And inspections are, I would really encourage you, if you have questions about the inspection process, we are doing a session, and I'll transition over to that slide in just a second, about inspections. They are not as scary as everyone makes them out to be. And they're just a really great thing to have. It's just like, just like if you're buying a property and you have somebody come out to do an inspection ahead of time, only they're not looking to save your butt, they're looking for safety. So I'm any other questions, raising hands, typing them in the Q&A or in the chat, anyone?
Looks like Peter had a question, because he hopefully this doesn't extend this by 2 hours, Peter. We were friendly before this question. He wants a brief 101 on the CDC eviction moratorium. So not sure if many of you have heard, you probably have, that through the Center for Disease Control, President Trump issued an order, or had the CDC issue an order, that if tenants can fill out a declaration which has 5 requirements, and if you give me a moment, I'll try to call up the requirements while I'm speaking.
And we'll post these on our website too, that provhousing.org/landlord, so that everyone can go back to them too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got it up here. So I'm gonna read as I do this. Basically, that 5 things. They've used best efforts to obtain all available government assistance. They won't make more than $99,000 as an individual, or $198 as a couple. They cannot pay their full rent, but they'll try to make their full rent, or try to obtain funding from an alternative source. Also, that they would become homeless, and that they understand that come January 1st, they they got to start paying again or basically move. So what does that mean? So the CDC declaration in simple is signed under the penalties of perjury. And if a tenant cannot make rent and you send them a 5-day demand notice all the way through, you're about to move them out with a moving truck. The moving truck is there in front of the house. If they hand you the CDC declaration, then you have to stop everything right there on the spot until January 1st. So you've got to move everything back in the house, or you can't file the case. Or as we're seeing, we're in the courthouse and the tenants are walking up to us in the courthouse. We can't proceed with a hearing that day or enter into an agreement. You have to wait till after January 1st, no matter where you're at. So if you sent a 5-day, come January 1st, you can file your non-payment case. If you're standing in the courthouse, the court will automatically give you a new date after January 1st. Or if you have an execution, you're about to move somebody out or you're moving somebody out, you have to bring the moving truck back January 1st. Now, January 1st is a holiday, January 2nd is a Saturday, January 3rd is a Sunday, January 4th is a Monday, so it's actually January 4th. But that is a short explanation of the CDC eviction moratorium. In essence, if you get one, if the constable gets one, if your attorney gets one, if your property manager gets one, you have to just stop everything and wait till January 1st.
One thing I'd like to mention is that during COVID, we had less than a handful of people that had a problem with their Section 8 tenant not being able to pay the rent. Because what happens is, as people lost their jobs, got unemployment, whatever their change was, their rent portion changes. So as soon as their rent went down, the housing authority paid more. And so we didn't find those kind of issues.
No, that's one of the benefits of Section 8. Absolutely.
Great safety net. And for landlords who are finding themselves with a tenant who does get behind for a COVID-related reason, there are some programs out there run through the state, like the Safe Harbor program, that you can apply to as a landlord or on behalf of the tenant to file for that back rent, that lost rent, and that's always helpful so that you don't get behind. You're a small business owner yourself. You want to make sure that your income is there as well. Peter, did you have something to share as well?
Oh, I wanted to thank Michael for doing that, and sorry to put you on the spot with it.
No, it's fine. I was just teasing you.
I just wanted to you didn't say anything to the contrary, but I still wanted to just emphasize that CDC moratorium is not, Section 8 specific or specific to subsidized housing. It's really like any private landlord or any tenant could potentially benefit from that. So it's just something for people to be aware of, whether you're, involved with Section 8 or not. I'm also just, I'm sending out, I sent it to the wrong place, but I'm going to send out to everybody the link for the Safe Harbor program. We can send it, follow up by email when we send out the slides, but that Ainsley just mentioned, because that is a great opportunity, basically, where not only is the tenant allowed to apply, but the landlord can apply directly to basically say, I have a tenant who's behind on rent, and United Way is using state COVID funds and can, once they verify that the tenant's income has been impacted by COVID and things like that, they can actually put together an agreement with you where they can pay up to 6 months of back rent, on behalf of the tenant.
I'm going to forward the slides over, if that's okay with everyone, so that we can keep going, because I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I do want to share that, again, can't stress this enough, we've posted a lot of this stuff out there, but we do have some really great sessions coming up. We're adding new sessions all the time. I think we added one just this week alone. They're all going to be via Zoom from 5:30 to 7. The next one Michael is joining us for again, and that's about reasonable accommodations. That's everyone's favorite topic. That's on October 26th. We have a great intro to Section 8. So if you do want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the world of Section 8, we're going to be doing that on November 5th for folks who want to learn more and just get a better idea of what that program really looks like. And then on November 16th, we have a great session on the inspection process as well as healthy housing that Caroline's putting together with some great partners. And that one's going to cover things like how to access free money and low cost money to make repairs, to do energy efficiency, as well as how to ace that inspection process, make it an easy breezy thing. So that's going to be a really great one for everyone as well. I do want to also mention that we have those great financial incentives. So if you've never worked with the PHA before or never worked with our program participants, highly recommend that you give us a call. We do have $500 right now on the table as a one-time payment to lease if you lease up to one of our new voucher holders in some very special programs called Mainstream or VASH, which is Veterans Housing. We have a great incentive for folks who are first time, never leased with the PHA landlords. And then we also have $500 if you are in a neighborhood of opportunity, which are those kind of areas shaded in orange on the screen. But just give us a call if you think you might have a unit in those areas. You're eligible for up to $1,000, so you don't get, you can take 2 of any 3 incentives. So that's a nice little extra bonus that we're offering for a very limited time, thanks to some funding from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rhode Island. And you can find us and follow us. I strongly encourage you to join us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and we're new to Instagram, but we are on Instagram as well, getting our Insta on. And then you can always check out our Landlord one-stop shop that we've put up with resources on the provhousing.org/landlord page. I encourage you to go there. Some of the great resources Michael talked about today, information on self-help evictions, the eviction moratorium, the Section 8, joining Section 8 program, as well as all of our upcoming presentations and programs are all there. And I've got Caroline's information. She is our AmeriCorps program member, and she is our initial point of contact for all our landlord needs right now. And so she has joined us for the year, and we're really excited to have her on board. You can contact her with any questions, give her a call, and she'll connect you. If she can't answer, she'll connect you to the right place. And so I will ask if there's any final questions before we close out. All right. I'm not seeing any hands raised, nothing flashing on my screen. So I'm going to say a big thank you so much for being here. Oh, we got a question. We got a hand raised. Hold on. Peter, how do I?
I think they unraised it. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
If somebody did intend to raise it, if you can raise it again.
Oh, where can we find the recording? That's a great question. We will be posting the recording on our that landlord page. So provhousing